Good morning, welcome back to the garden. As you might be able to tell by all of these greens sitting here behind me, today we are going to be planting a salad greens garden. But more importantly, I'm going to be showing you exactly how to plant your own greens bed in a small area for not a lot of money in an uncomplicated way. And most importantly, in a way that's going to make sure that you have salad greens, not just for a couple of months out of the year, but actually for the entire year. I'm so excited to get into this. It's been a long winter of rainy, cold weather, and I'm so thrilled to be back here with you. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so the first thing I want you to think about before we even put the soil into the ground is how you're gonna make sure that your salad greens bed has a lot of diversity, that has a lot of variety. And that's really gonna make sure that you have success, not just at a given time of the year, but throughout that entire year. And I don't mean just having different varieties of lettuce. I mean actually selecting plants from different species, different genuses, different families. So for instance, down there at the end, we've got Swiss chard, basically a mutant beet plant. We've got kale, the cruciferous plant. We've got lettuce and curly endive. Those are from the daisy family. We've got spinach from the amaranth family. We've got Japanese tatsoi and mizuna, also cruciferous, but from more of a mustard group. They grow very differently than something like kale. We even have an allium here, Japanese green onion, and all of those different plants, they're creating different microclimates. That kale, that Swiss chard is gonna help provide shade to the more fragile, vulnerable plants like the tatsoi when that tatsoi wants to bolt in the high heat of summer. And those bushier plants like the endive and the lettuce, those are providing shade and ground cover to the soil so that it never fully dries out, which all of these plants are going to appreciate. That diversity is really the key to making sure that we have a healthy bed as a whole, even if specific plants are struggling at specific times of the year, depending on your weather. So it's really key. Now, of course, you don't need 8 different plants. You don't need to plant exactly what I am. This is just the kind of thing that I like to use to create a really delicious salad or a really delicious green smoothie. You should plant what you're actually going to enjoy eating. Just make sure that you've got lots of different plants with different growth habits from different families. In terms of the type of container that you select for this project, I would say go ahead and use this as an opportunity to opt into those shallower, cheaper containers that maybe don't work so well for things like zucchini and tomato, what have you. Most of these plants, with the exception of maybe Swiss chard, which actually has a monster root system, most of these plants actually have fairly shallow root systems. But what they really do prefer is to have consistent moisture. And actually, a shallower raised bed, just due to gravity, is easier to keep moist, on the top layer where those root systems are, than a really deep bed. It's one of the reasons that I'm actually not a huge fan of those super tall raised beds. In any case, in this application for a salad greens bed, a shallow raised bed, a shallow container is actually going to work out really, really well. Hey there, and apologies for the interruption. If you're enjoying this video, I would really, really appreciate it if you went ahead and hit the like button. Of course, only if it's actually proving useful. And if you like this kind of thing, if you like learning about how to grow more vegetables in your home garden, go ahead and subscribe. We'll be making lots more videos of this nature throughout the entire year. And I would love to see you as a member of the community and joining along our journey here in our own little suburban homestead garden. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Me and the chickens, the girls here, we really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get back to that salad green garden. Now that you've got your container picked out, the next thing you need to think about is where you're going to put it. And I'm back here in the very corner of my garden, what is probably the shadiest part of my garden, where we're growing a bed of overgrown baby carrots. And this is really an ideal place for a salad greens bed because it's got 2 things going for it. It's in partial shade throughout the entire year, and it's got really easy access to water. And those are the 2 things you want to optimize for. It's better to have slower growth in a shadier part of your garden throughout that entire year than it is to have great growth for the first month or 2 and then deal with tons of bolting issues from your plants getting too much sun for the height of summer for the rest of the year. So go ahead and optimize for a little bit of shade and easy access to water. We've got this beautiful mizuna right here. We actually made a full video on how to grow mizuna if you're interested, and I'm so ready to start planting. But there's one more thing I want you to do. I promise, just one more thing, and that's add a little bit of fertility back into that soil. There's this misconception, right, that lettuce and spinach and mizuna, they're not hungry plants, so you don't need to fertilize that soil before planting. But really, they're only not hungry in comparison to something like a tomato or a pumpkin. They still do really benefit from having plenty of nutrients in the soil, particularly nitrogen. We want them to grow lots of leaves, right? And so they're gonna benefit from adding some compost and some organic fertilizer into that soil before you ever start planting. And in particular, that compost is really important because we want them to have nutrients throughout the entire season. And you don't want to have to be coming back here and fertilizing them every month, right? You want them to have nutrients the entire season. And that compost is going to break down over time and make your life a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'll show you exactly how we do it. And then I promise we're going to start planting. First thing, I'm just going to use this hoe to clear the remaining weeds in the bed. Now I'm adding some cheap compost and aged manure into the bed, again, just to make sure that we've got healthy plants throughout the entire year. All right, make sure you're breaking up any big clumps before we actually start planting. I'm adding about 2 cups of fertilizer here for the entire bed. A little bit concentrated over here where the kale is going to be, just because the kale tends to be a little bit hungrier than the rest of the plants. Go ahead and rake it all in. We want that compost as well as the fertilizer to be well incorporated into that top layer of potting mix, potting soil beneath. And then we'll just smooth it out so we have a nice even layer here at the top. So we've got all of our seedlings laid out here on the soil, ready to go, and I'm so excited to get them planted in there. They're really excited to get into the ground. But before I do, I want to talk about a couple things. I really want you to think about your placement strategy before you actually plant any seeds or plant those seedlings. You can see over here that I've got my bigger plants, my more heat tolerant plants, in particular the Swiss chard and to a lesser degree the kale. And the reason I've done that is these plants are more heat tolerant. They're gonna actually be able to withstand that sun and provide some shade to the more vulnerable plants like our lettuce and our tatsai over here, which can't stand up to the full brunt of my hot summers. Of course, if you live somewhere a little bit cooler, where sunshine is at a premium, you can do the exact opposite. You can put your smaller, low-lying plants here in the front and your bigger ones in the back, where they're still gonna receive sunlight, nothing shading them out, but they're also not covering up the smaller plants. So just up to you and your climate and your needs. The other thing I want you to notice is how densely we are planting here. Just to be clear, this isn't optimal. These plants aren't gonna get as big as they would if I left them a little bit more room. The reason I like to do this is twofold. Again, it's so hot here during the summer that this soil down here will dry out so quickly unless it is fully shaded out. And by densely planting like this, you're not gonna be able to see the soil at all. It's going to be so abundant and bountiful right here. The other thing is, I prefer to sort of harvest my greens at a younger age, to harvest those baby greens over letting the leaves get kind of larger. I just think they taste better, they have a better texture that way. And sort of this dense planting lends itself to that type of harvesting because I'm never gonna let the plants get particularly large, so I can fit a little bit more of them into the same amount of space. I will say, I think most gardeners leave too much space between their greens. So I'm gonna challenge you to fit a few more plants into your space than you normally would. All right, let's go ahead and get them into the ground. Boom, done. We've got ourselves a nice, big, beautiful bed of salad greens. Not too shabby, right? Well, thank you for joining me in the garden today. I have tons more to plant this week, which means there are going to be tons more videos to come. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you'll join us on the next one. Until next time, y'all, happy gardening.